So what you're saying is the console is inside the computer. Maybe my video review on how to use Harrison Mixbus as a broadcast mixer really inspired you to try it, but I didn't exactly show you how to set it up step by step, so that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to show you how to set up inputs, outputs, and monitoring so you can get all that analog goodness on your broadcast mix. Hey, if you're new here and you're passionate about making church sound great, whether people are listening online or in the room, go ahead and hit subscribe and ding the little bell to get notified every time I post new content. Here's what it looks like when you load up Mixbus. And for you computer nerds out there, yes, I did buy my version of Windows. I just can't get the registration key to work. Sorry. So we're going to create a new session, and we're going to start with an empty template. Now it's going to ask me for my audio and MIDI setup. Audio system, driver AISO. I'm going to select my input device and my output device. Now, sometimes you cannot select different input and output devices, but in this case I can, but I still want to use my PreSonus Studio Live console as the audio interface for this. I made a whole video all about how to get in and out of your broadcast DAW. You can check out that link in the card up here. So we're going to start, and we're good to go. Now that we're good to go, we're going to work on the mixer side rather than the editor side. So I'm going to go ahead and close this window. And here's what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for my mixer. Now you can see the buses have already popped up, but I don't have any input channels created yet. So to do this, I'm going to create all my mono input channels first and all my stereo input channels next. Then I'm going to rearrange them and add their I/O. But this is going to help because two mono channels grouped here don't behave the same as a stereo channel. And you don't want to have to copy your EQ on your piano left over to your piano right every time. That's just going to slow you down. So we're going to go to track, add track bus or VCA. And we're going to name all our audio tracks audio for now. And then we're going to add 14 of those and then mono. So we're going to add selective items and leave the dialog open. And now we're going to add, 8 stereo channels. Add and close. And I'm just making all this up, but you probably should be working from your input list. And you do have that in a spreadsheet, right? If you don't, you should check out this video up here about how to set up your analog console. It's way easier to do this when you're copying from a plan rather than just trying to make it up as you go along. Now that we've got these set up, we can drag over our buses and our inputs over here. And we can see where our mono channels stop and our stereo channels start based on the meters right here. So you can see here we've got 2, here we've got 1. So 1 through 14 are our mono channels. Now we can go over here to view and show mixer list. That will show all our audio strips over here, and then we can drag them around. So if we start renaming, we have kick. Now we want our overheads. So we're going to go over here to audio 15. We're going to drag this in after Tom 2. And now that's going to be a stereo channel for our overheads. Maybe we have another drum pad right after that. So we're going to go to audio 16. And we have to rename it over here. You get the picture. So now we have our bass, our acoustic guitar, our electric guitar. Now let's say we've got a piano, so we need another stereo channel. We go up here to 17, and we can rename that piano. Now this is going to continue until you're done with your input list, but I'm just going to skip ahead for now so I can show you what to do. We could route all of our I/O through the drop-down menu at the top of the channel strip. We click here, we can see the channel strip, and you can see input channel 1, input channel 2, 3, 4. Then over here to overheads, this is channel 5. We're actually going to skip channel 6 and go to overheads with 7 and 8. So we could do it here, but we might have to do that for a bunch of channels down the line. We don't want to have to do that. So we're going to go to the window and the audio connections. Now, when this window pops up, let me drag it back over to my other screen, we can see that we have all of these routed. So you can see the destinations down here for our channels, and we can see our hardware inputs over here for our inputs. So, this is 1-to-1. If we go down this way, we're skipping that channel on channel 6. We don't have to assign it to anything. If we've got odd evens, we want to keep it odd and even. We keep going down. So channel 7 and 8, they're still labeled that. We want to undo all of that. Our electric guitar on channel, or our bass on channel, or SPDs on 9 and 10, bass, acoustic guitar, piano 13 and 14, and then so on. So you want to eliminate all these where it's double patched so that you don't get 2 channels going to the 2 different places. But I'll show you a little trick for doing it with like a drum replacement plugin in just a minute. So we've got all that set up and we're good to go. Now all our inputs should be in the right place. Remember, when you're selecting whether or not you want to listen to your input, if you want to be in record mode, or listen to what you have on the disc already, these buttons up here in the record/input mode are really helpful. Also, if you want to toggle all your channels at once, going between the different modes, holding down Shift and Control and clicking on that will do it for all the channels. This will save you a lot of headache when it goes time to record ARM and switch back and forth between virtual soundcheck. Now, I actually recommend laying this out as closely to front of house as is possible, because you're gonna have to multiply leadership at some point. You can't do it all yourself. So the easier it is for you to train in one area and then make the training easy in another area, the more easily you'll have a better team and a bigger team. And that's always a win. Speaking of building your team, if you want to get clear language on how to dial in a great broadcast mix, check out my free guide, How to Lead Your Church Audio Stream Team. You can find it in the link down in the description below. Now we've got all our inputs labeled and patched. Now we can assign everything to its groups. I already cheated and went ahead and labeled all the groups, so you didn't have to watch me do that. I'll drag that over here. And you can see all these groups here: drums, drum crush, bass group, guitars, keys, vocals, speech, crowd, and video. So now I drag that back over. All right, and I want to go ahead and get rid of this show mixer list. I don't need that right now. And on here, I want to click on sends. That'll bring up all my sends. So here, starting the drums, I want the drums to have assigned the drums and the drum crush. And maybe I'll unassign some of these from the drum crush bus because I don't always want to compress everything in parallel, but for now we'll just do that. Send it to the bass, and just clicking on this sends it where it needs to go. Have the keys, vocals, and then our handheld and preacher is going to our speech group. Crowd mics are going to the crowd group, and our video is going to the video group. I don't have to group the stuff that's just individual, but it helps me keep my brain organized for the way that I have everything grouped together. So I do it even if there's just one channel going to a group, I still group it. Now we unassign everything from the master bus so that it only goes through the groups, it's not traveling there in parallel. And if you want to do it quickly, Shift and Control on Windows, not exactly sure what it's like on a Mac, but it might be Shift Command. Shift, Control, and Click will do it for all the channels, just like your record mode or your input mode. So that can save you a bunch of clicks too. Now that we're getting our plugin set up, I highly recommend that you utilize the favorites plugin list. Let me show you how to do that. You can right click anywhere here and say new plugin, and then go to Plugin Manager. Now we can see a list of all the plugins that we have installed, and we can choose which ones we want to go in our favorite plugins list. It'll be in a drop down. So let's say I've got Little Plate in there. I've got the Moog EQ2. With Mixbus, I've got great EQ and compression already, so I'm probably only going to put stuff in here that's more specialty use, like Waves Tune Real Time, or C6, or F6. Those are the things that I can't get just with the built-in EQ and compression. Now on one of my channels, I can right-click, hit New Plugin, and then from my favorites, I can select whichever one I want. So on this one, I'm going to choose Waves Tune Real Time. And I'm actually going to put this after my EQ, but before my compression. I'm going to add another plugin and go ahead and put the de-esser And I'm going to put that after my compressor. And actually, I'm going to keep this before my compressor, but after my EQ. Let's say that I DS it, but then I want it brighter again. But if I turn it brighter at the channel EQ, then I'm going to be pushing more into the de-esser, and I don't want that. So I'm going to add another EQ after the de-esser, and that's going to give me some fun too. Now you see this one is in green. That means it's post fader, but it's a EQ plugin. It's not a dynamic plugin, so that doesn't make a big difference on whether or not it's pre or post fader. But I want to keep all my plugins before the fader just because. I don't know. That's the way I want to do it. Drag it before the fader and it turns red again. I mean, how many EQs do you have that can add 40K? Now that I've got all these set the way that I want to, I can go ahead and drag them to the other channels that I wanted on. It's that simple. If I made any changes to the built-in EQ and compression, those can copy back and forth with just a click and a drag as well. To bring up the EQ instead of the sends on 32C, you just click the little button and your EQ knobs pop up instead of the sends knobs. Or if you want it all to go away and just see all the inserts, you can click on it again and it disappears. The next thing we're going to do is set up effect sends or aux sends. I could use buses for this, but I actually want to send my effects returns to the same group that the input channel that's feeding it is. So my vocal effects go to my vocal bus, and my drum effects go to my drum bus. It's that simple. To do this, we can click on the little plus, and it's going to bring up the Add Track Bus VCA group. We're going to choose audio buses, and we're going to choose, 4 of them, not 40. We'll just name them effects, and they'll start that way. Now we've got effects 1, 2, 3, and 4 here. And let's rename them drum verb, instrument verb, box verb, and box delay. Now on our input channels, we can have a post fader send. So we right click, new aux send, and choose which bus we want to go it to. You've got to remember to shift click on the send level so that it goes all the way up to 0. I couldn't find a setting in the menus that will make this happen automatically, but my recommendation is just to create all the sends and set them to 0 and then copy them to the other channels. So you only have to do it once. You're not repeating the steps over and over again. Now make sure to put your sends on your verb back to each group that it goes with. So maybe we send it to all the guitars and keys for the instrument group, and then for the vocals, we'll send it to the vocal bus. And that should be that. Now, when you're adding the effects plugins, I actually recommend putting it between the EQ and the compression. So that way you have the option of EQing the signal before it gets to the effects processor, like I recommend in some of these videos over here. And then you can compress it after the fact to change the envelope of the sound, which is really handy. So let's add new plugin, and let's go by tags and go to reverb. Here we go. So if you're with me so far, go ahead and type Mixbus down in the comments below. So far, we figured out how to route our inputs, we've routed our groups, and we've set up our effects sends and returns. Now we're ready to move on to monitoring on our output section. You've got options to choose where the monitor output goes and where the main output goes. You can do this on the audio connections window, or you can just do it right at the bottom of the screen. Let's imagine that I'm using the same console's outputs to be my main output routed to the streaming computer. I like to do 33 and 34, so I would go here and choose those two. Then it's going to show up on my PreSonus on aux input number 1. I want a separate channel for my monitoring so that I can add EQ, I can solo things without it cutting the stream, lots of different stuff like that. So I'm going to use the monitor outputs, and on there I'm going to choose channels 35 and 36. Now I can queue up with my headphones or my studio monitors what's returning on that channel and not have to mess at all with the channel that's going to the stream. So the other thing you want to do on your monitor bus is the processors. So here we are, we've got monitor, and we can add a plugin on here. And we're gonna go by creator, waves. We're gonna go to NX stereo. Now when I engage this plugin and I'm listening in headphones, it sounds more like studio monitors. Turn off the tracking. I put my circumference of my head here. That was kind of fun. And we'll just go ahead and hit sweet spot. And I can change how much room ambience I'm hearing or not. And this is really helpful for making sure that you don't add too many effects when you're listening in headphones. Because when you're in headphones, it feels so dry that adding a lot of effects feels natural. But then when you listen to it on a speaker, it can feel like it's drowning and you didn't realize it. That's the beautiful thing about this plugin. The other thing I can do is add another plugin that EQ on it. So let's look for some EQ, filters, and we can go ahead and crush down everything here. This EQ is fun because you just get to drag stuff. But when this EQ is on, it's going to sound really honky, like it's on a really terrible speaker. So I'm going to bypass this most of the time, but to check my mid-range, to make sure that my balances are right and that nothing's too cluttery and that the vocals are intelligible still, I'm going to engage this EQ and then it'll sound much worse, but I'll know how it sounds on somebody's tiny phone. If you're in a monitoring situation or the driver on your particular device doesn't allow different inputs and outputs, there's another solution I've got for you. It's the Voxengo Recorder plugin, and it'll allow you to record into an audio file or an MP3 what's coming off of that plugin, or you can send it to an MME audio device. To bypass either of these plugins, or any other plugin, just bypass the green dot on the left side of it. All right, if you're wanting to set up drum replacement plugins, here's how you do it. We'll go ahead and create another stereo channel because we probably want it to be stereo. We'll add and close these, and they'll probably show up at the end. There we go, audio 1, audio 2. We'll go ahead and rename these. If my computer will keep up. Kick trigger and snare trigger. Now it's easier if we go to the mixer list and we can drag these around that way. Now make sure to route them to the right spot. Take them out of the master bus. And now we can add our trigger plugin. Now the first thing you want to check before you load any samples is the latency mode. We're going to go to settings and we're going to go to live latency. This is going to give us only 4 milliseconds of latency, whereas in low latency mode it's about 23 milliseconds. I'll just show you what it's like in low latency mode, but if we were going to switch latency modes, we would have to unassign the plugin and then open it up again. That's going to make the program look again at how much latency it's causing and compensate accordingly. It won't do that until you close the plugin and open it again. If you've already set up your samples, you can save that setting and then reload that preset after you reload the plugin. But let's take it off and take it on and put it on again. Then we copy it over to the other trigger channel as well, and now we can put this here. Now I want to put this before my EQ or compressor. Now all my EQ and compression is going to happen after the sample triggers. Next we're going to take a look at the routing. So we'll go to Window and then Audio Connections. We're going to make sure that we're on Mixbus 32 tracks. Kick trigger, it's not assigned. That's assigned to 24 and 25. And we want to undo that and we want to have it be channel 1 and channel 2. That way we have now double assigned that input for our kick and our snare to the trigger channel as well. Now we can load up our samples that we want to get. Sounds good. Good enough for a tutorial. And load up this. That works. Now, when our inputs come in from our audio interface, it's going to trigger these at the same time. We'll pull these down and hit play for you guys so that you can hear the difference. All right, so I've got my band in a box ready to go, and I changed my inputs to looking at the input. So when I hit play on this, the kick and the snare are going to go to the kick and snare channel, but they're also going to be sent to the trigger channel as well. Let me hit play. So don't judge my snare sample because I just picked it out of a list, but that's how it works, and it works pretty brilliantly. So I'm not a Trigger 2 power user, but I do know that it's possible to add bleed suppression and a whole lot of other features that you can dive deep into. If you have an idea or some suggestions for other users, go ahead and put those down in the comments below. I'd love to hear them from you. And just a note, be sure that you're paying attention to when the drummer's playing like ghost notes and cadences and stuff. There's a beauty in getting great sounds from a sample, but there's a real artistry from finding a drummer that really knows how to make the drums speak, and those little things in between make a big difference. You don't want to miss those. So to recap, we chose our audio interface and then made all of our channels and routed the inputs to those, hopefully working off your input list. Then we assigned those inputs to their appropriate group, which is also labeled, and then we added our effects sends. These effects sends also get routed to the appropriate group, and we can choose whether or not the reverb or delay goes before or after the EQ and compression, and that can be really helpful too. Next, we made sure that our outputs were routed in the right spot, one for our main mix and the other one for monitoring, so that we can use plugins to filter it to see what it sounds like on a phone or a laptop, or to use Waves NX mix room simulation so that it makes it a little bit easier to mix in the cans. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. You can drop them down in the comments below. And remember, until next time, it's all about the low end, avoid the sound tech solo, and nobody leaves church humming the kick drum. Check out some more videos down here, and we'll see you back here next time on Attaway Audio.